Secretary of State Marco Rubio has had a big week in Europe, and the praise from international leaders has once again revived presidential considerations. Here to break down all of this is The Hill's senior editor, Jesse Burns. Hey, Jesse. So let's start with the Munich Security Conference. What did Rubio say that had some in Europe so happy?
Well, he talked about rebuilding and reforming the transatlantic alliance, and he really pushed a lot of Trump's policy agendas in a way that was firm, but it was a lot less scolding than perhaps the speech we saw from Vice President Vance last year at the same conference. At one point, Rubio even talked about the United States and Europe, saying that, we belong together. And that really left an impression among these European leaders who have seen a strikingly different tone from some other Trump administration officials over the first year of Trump's second term.
Since the conference, what has Rubio been doing that perhaps continued his momentum? Is there still some skepticism on Europe's part of America's maybe commitment to the continent?
Yeah, well, Rubio continued his trek through Europe, meeting with pro-Trump leaders from Slovakia and Hungary. But really, it is a testament to the standing power of this speech in Munich that, multiple days later, it is continuing to gin up interest on both sides of the Atlantic in terms of Rubio's performance and what it could mean, the ramifications potentially for him personally, but also for the United States policy and its position toward Europe. We've seen a number of European allies who, despite them saying that they appreciated the note of unity that the Secretary of State struck in his speech, they still believe the United States should stand on its own 2 feet, as UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer put it. And so there is this sense that the European nations need to be independent. They cannot depend on the United States, despite some of this newfound unity message coming from the Secretary of State.
And The Hill is reporting that all of this has added up to some momentum among Republican insiders for Rubio to run for president in 2028. What can you tell us about that? And has the Secretary of State commented on the speculation?
Well, he has long shied away from trying to, discuss anything like this. We've also seen Vice President Vance also, push back on any kind of discussion about this following that speech by Rubio. And, Rubio has long maintained, he would support Vance. They're both widely viewed as the two most promising heir apparents to Trump. Trump has himself tried to stay neutral in this, although, we'll see if that continues over the next year. But certainly there is a lot of interest in both of these individuals. I think one thing that Rubio is helping set him apart is not only is he involved in trying to shore up the president's legacy on issues like the border and stemming mass migration into the United States from certain Central American countries, but he is also, the tip of the spear of pressing the president's foreign policy agenda. He's been involved in a litany of key foreign policy moments in Trump's second term, and a lot of those are the areas where Trump is looking to kind of shore up his legacy in his second term.
An interesting comparison that has come up is at the Munich Security Conference, the response to Rubio's speech was a lot different than what we saw last year with J.D. Vance. What can you tell us about that difference? And I wonder if you think Europe looks at Rubio as possibly being more palatable than Vance as a possible president after 2028.
Well, they certainly, did hit on some of the same points. They both warned about the long-term ramifications of mass migration to, Western civilization, as they put it. They raised concerns about, the United States and European allies needing to re-envision some of the post-World War II organizations like the United Nations. But they took very different tones when it comes to other elements of their speech. When Vice President Vance came into this conference last year, he memorably declared that a new sheriff is in town with the Trump administration talking about the world stage. And Secretary of State Rubio took a different tone. He said, the United States is a child of Europe, as he put it, much more conciliatory and kind of framing the United States as a partner. He did take a firm tone when it comes to trying to push Europe on some of Trump's policy initiatives, but in a way that was much more well received from this audience in Europe.
President Trump has so far declined to say whether he would prefer Vance or Rubio to be at the top of the ticket, but what do you think we should be keeping our eyes on in the coming months as the presidential campaign for 2028 begins to get into the opening phase?
Well, I think continuing to look for ways in which both individuals are trying to set themselves apart. Both are very deeply involved on a lot of issues at a high level for the administration, but some of these opportunities just present themselves for one of them to stand out and to, so I think looking at how these opportunities like, major speeches, high profile public appearances, how they resonate with the audience, how they actually move the conversation forward, I think that will be something key to watch in the coming months. Both of them have been involved in issues that Trump cares deeply about, trying to bring peace in the Middle East, trying to lead different initiatives with Venezuela, Latin America, also Greenland. And so these are things that both can kind of pitch themselves as caring about trying to shore up Trump's legacy, but we'll be paying close attention to any kind of daylight we might see between them in the coming months as well.
Yeah, it's been extremely friendly between the two. Be interesting to see if that continues as we get into the thick of the 2028 presidential campaign. For now, we will leave it at that. Jesse Burns, thank you.
Thank you.